UFC Fight Night Holm vs. Aldana is over, and this was a long one. On this card, we saw 3 former UFC champions, 2 tough winners, 5 Contender Series alum, and 7 fights going the distance. We saw a promising middleweight make his UFC debut and a title challenger continue to evolve. We're going to go over all that, so let's get into it. Here's my real winners and losers of UFC Fight Night Holm vs. Aldana. We opened the card up with a lightweight bout between Vangi and Jason Ayari. Luigi wins this one by first round TKO. It just didn't take very long, especially when you consider that Jason Ayari can really take a shot. Ayari went the distance with both Stevie Ray and Darren Till eating their best shots and surviving, but Vangi had a little extra spice in his soup. Luigi's first UFC fight didn't go as planned. He banged up his knee early and eventually lost the fight, presumably due to the injury. 2 years and 2 surgeries later, Luigi's ready for his second UFC fight. He came out looking ready for war and looking like the fighter that we expected to see way back when. Jason Ayari was also coming off a 2-year layoff. Entering the UFC in late 2016, Ayari held a promising record of 15-3. But after a split decision win, 2 decision losses, he needed to win to get back on track. Ayari looked good early, pressing the pace and forcing the action, throwing out jabs and backing his opponent down, but Ayari seemed to forget that he was the much taller and much longer fighter and walked right into Vangi's wheelhouse. While in close, Luigi landed a left hook that hurts Ayari, followed that up with several strikes right behind the ear, followed that up with a kick to the jaw, and followed that up with some good ground and pound, only stopping when the referee waved it off. Luigi increases his record to 9-1. He gets his first UFC win, retains his 100% finish rate, and looks like the fighter we're hoping he'll be. In a somewhat emotional post-fight interview, Luigi says, "You're not a UFC fighter until you get a win. Well then, sir, welcome to the UFC." Luigi Vangi, big winner. Next up is the fight in the bantamweight bout between Kenney and Hale. Kenney wins this one by unanimous decision, and this was a very lopsided 15-minute fight. Although both fighters have a pretty good wrestling pedigree, this one took place entirely on the feet, and Casey completely ate him up. Alatang's body and right arm were marked up from Kenney's leg strikes. He was so red he looked like he fell asleep on his side while sunbathing. His hands were good, but his kicks were excellent. The redness eventually turned to bruises and blood started trickling from his ear. Kenney was just all over him. He never gave him a moment to rest. I'm very impressed with Kenney's aggression and forward attacks. I'm also impressed that Alatang was able to take so many kicks to the ribs and the abs. They were obviously bothering him, but Alatang showed a good heart and grit that you rarely see anywhere outside of the Octagon. Although he was getting decisively beaten up, he kept his awareness and he never let a head kick get through clean. But that's about all you can say that's positive about Alatang's performance. All 3 judges agree that this was all Kenney. The only thing missing here was a finish, but Kenney was going for it. The kicks were landing and doing damage, but they weren't putting Alatang away. Kenney recognized this and resolved to throwing spinning back fists and a few other finishing attacks late in the 3rd round in an attempt to end the night. He's unable to do so, but still, I love to see fighters do this. He could have coasted in the 3rd, just kept doing more of the same. The fight was all but wrapped up, but he showed the cage fighter mentality and went for the finish. The Contender Series alum pushes his record to 15-2-1, puts an end to Alatang's win streak, and gets his 4th UFC win in just over 1.5 years. Kenney, big winner. Next up is a women's strawweight bout between Loma and Frey. Loma wins this one by unanimous decision. This one started out pretty fast. It kept up a good pace. Early on, Loma showed really good elbows in the clinch, opening up Frey along the cheekbone. She's a world-class Muay Thai practitioner, and that was fairly evident here. Loma looked comfortable and poised, showing good movement and confidence. Frey was in this fight and refused to go away, but her frustrations were visibly growing as Loma started to get further and further ahead. On the feet, Loma controlled the contest, proved she's a better stand-up fighter. In the third round, Frey was able to get a takedown. Not a whole lot came from it, but still it was enough to make you wonder if maybe Frey should have looked for that takedown a little earlier. Loma continues to look like a fighter that could really go places, but she's got to learn how to finish her opponents. She stretches her record to 5-2, but has only one finish. At 2-1 in the UFC, a big finish in her next fight could really springboard her up the rankings. In fact, I think that lack of killer instinct is really the only thing holding her back. We know she's a Muay Thai expert. We know she can slice you up. We need to know that she can end her opponent. But she didn't show us anything we didn't know. A fun and entertaining fight, but for the sake of this video series, there's no real winner here. Next up, we get a middleweight fight between Jordan Williams and Nassourdine Imayev. Imayev wins this one by unanimous decision. This one was a lot of fun. The fight opens with a pretty much immediate head clash that opens up both fighters, so we've got a little bit of blood throughout the entire fight. And that was just the start. Both fighters were landing clean strikes throughout, but the pace slowed considerably as the fight went on. It was a good matchup, but Imayev proved to be the better fighter and started putting some space between them. He was the better striker, the better grappler, the better wrestler. The only area where Williams proved to be better was his ability to take a punch and keep going. And he had plenty of opportunities to showcase that skill set tonight. Imayev, inversely, didn't seem to take the shots very well. Jordan Williams won a contract on Contender Series just last month, and both fighters made their UFC debuts tonight, but it was Imayev who came out on top. As exciting as this fight was, it seemed to me that both fighters showed their youth and inexperience, and both ended up looking very beatable. A harder hitter will likely finish Imayev, and a tighter grappler will likely finish Williams. More than making a statement, I feel like both Imayev and Williams told us that they got some things to work on before they can make a real run in the UFC. With that in mind, let's move on. There's no real winner here. Next up is the featherweight bout between Charles Jourdain and Josh Calabao. We get another decision here, and this one has a little less sting on it considering it was a split draw. The scorecard of 30-27 Jourdain, 29-28 Calabao, and 28-28 is one of the more unusual scorecards you'll ever see, and it probably should never happen. One judge sees all rounds for Jourdain, which was crazy, while another judge sees 2 of 3 for Calabao, and then the 28-28, I don't get it. Well, maybe it's not too bad for Calabao, who comes in as one of the biggest underdogs of the night, but I'm sure he's not happy about starting his UFC career 0-1-1. Jourdain moves his UFC record to 1-2-1, so I'm not sure if that's better or worse. This is a fight I was looking forward to, and it delivered in many ways. I thought it was dragging a bit in the second round, but overall it was pretty exciting. Both fighters came to fight and they both had their moments, but when the judges can't even call a winner, how am I supposed to do it? I look forward to seeing both of these guys again, but tonight, obviously, no real winner here. Next up is the welterweight fight between Carlos Condit and Court McGehee. This was another unanimous decision win. That's 5 decisions in a row. It's turning into a long night. I've been a big Condit fan since the WEC days, and I would love to see him get another flying knee KO win. It wasn't a knee, but we almost got a KO in the last seconds of round 1. But Court has always been a supremely tough competitor. Dazed and with a broken nose, he still answered the second round bell and proved to be still in the fight. There weren't as many fireworks as I had hoped, but it was still fun. Condit breaks his 5-fight losing streak, but he had to go all the way down the ranks to Court McGehee to do it. After the fight, he's talking about what comes next, but I'm not sure it's anything good. I really wanted to put Carlos in my winners section, but I just didn't see much from him that makes me think that he can contend with any kind of real competition. Court is very tough and very hittable and makes for a great fight with anybody who wants to throw. But he's not getting any better either. They're both old fighters who've been around and are now just chasing the glory days, and there's really no shame in that. There's still fight left in these old bones, but what they really proved tonight is that they can't and won't be able to hang in there with the world's elite. I gotta say it, there's no real winner here. The first fight of the main card is a middleweight bout between Daquan Townsend and Ducho. Finally, we get another finish, but it may have been a bit premature. Ducho wins by second round TKO, and this fight was fun while it lasted. First round was all stand up with both fighters engaging and going for the kill. Tuturovic pressed Townsend against the cage and showed good accuracy with his strikes. Townsend just ate those attacks though and threw several of his own back. But one of Tudorovic's best assets is his head movements and ability to slip punches, and Townsend just couldn't find the mark. But Daquan started the second round really looking to find it, moving forward and forcing Tuturovic to look for a takedown. Ducho's been talking up his jiu-jitsu, and he finally got a chance to show it. He got the takedown, got the mount, and gave us some really impressive ground and pound. It's refreshing to see this type of ground and pound. He didn't rest or take time off. His strikes were accurate and plentiful, but I'm not convinced that Townsend was out of there yet. Townsend was actively trying to escape the mount, but the punches kept coming and the referee had seen enough. I find it a little premature, but that doesn't take away from Ducho's performance. He wins his UFC debut, he keeps his undefeated record, and he's showing a whole lot of promise. Ducho Tuturovic, big winner. Move back down to the bantamweight for a fight between Phillips and Cameron Else. Kyler wins by an early second round TKO, and this one kinda went the way it was supposed to go. Kyler is a very good fighter, and although I don't know a whole lot about Cameron Else, he seemed to have bit off more than he could chew. But Cameron did take this fight on short notice, and you gotta do what you gotta do to get into the UFC, even if that means fighting someone above your level. So props to Cameron Else for agreeing to this fight without any real preparation. But this was Phillips' fight from the get-go. Late in the first round, he got the takedown and was really able to show his dominance. He put Cameron in a bad position and made him pay for it, but he was unable to finish the fight then. The second round started as the first one ended. Phillips knew he had a big advantage and looked to take the fight down again. He did, and Cameron showed no resistance, just turtling up and waiting on the referee. Kyler is looking promising, going to the ranks of Contender Series and the Ultimate Fighter, and now 2-0 in actual UFC competition. He's asking for another fight on Fight Island, and having taken no damage, he may get it. Let's hope we see him again soon. Kyler Phillips, big winner. Next up is a women's bantamweight bout between number 1 contender Germaine de Randamie and number 4 Juliana Pena. Now here we go. This was a really good fight. Two fighters doing everything they can to implement their game plans and put the fight where they're strongest. de Randamie looked quick and accurate and dangerous on her feet. Juliana looked tough and stubborn and resilient. All the things that I expected to see. But Juliana did get a few more punches in than I expected. And of course, de Randamie got the guillotine choke, and I definitely did not expect that. De Randamie is such a great stand-up fighter. We all know that. She's patient, smart, accurate, and strong. But in her previous fights, she has shown a serious lack of takedown defense. Although Pena still got the takedowns in this one, de Randamie didn't make it easy on her. And on the ground, she's able to escape and reverse, something else we've not seen from her before. Of course, Pena's last takedown attempt ended with de Randamie choking her unconscious. Again, something we've not seen from her before. Several fights ago, Germaine de Randamie was simply an acclaimed Muay Thai fighter who happened to be in an octagon. But tonight, she really resembled a mixed martial artist. She's getting more patient in the cage and more confident in her other skills. The only problem here is who's next. Does she fight Amanda Nunes again? Does she get the winner of the main event tonight? It seems as though we're starting to get into that territory where we have the champion way up here, the next best right around here, and everyone else way down here. But then again, de Randamie is proving to us that she continues to improve. She improved exponentially between those two fights with Nunes, and she looked better than ever here. Germaine de Randamie, big winner. event of the evening was a heavyweight bout between Yorgan de Castro and Carlos Felipe. Felipe wins this one by unanimous decision, and it was a fun fight for 2 out of the 3 rounds. The first 2 rounds, both fighters were exchanging shots and really only moved in order to get position. We saw very little running or clinching, but we also didn't see a whole lot of power, especially for heavyweights. Usually when the big guys stand toe-to-toe, there is an electricity in the air, a feeling that one of them is going to go down very soon, but it didn't feel like that here. I'm not convinced that either of these fighters have the power that's required to be a success in the heavyweight division. Still, the first 2 rounds were exciting, but that last one was a complete stinker. They spent the whole 5 minutes hugging each other and resting, and the ref had his work cut out for him. He had little patience for the hugging affair and did everything in his power to resume the fight, separating the fighters many times and not giving them much time before doing so. It was almost comical how de Castro would get separated and then immediately walk forward to hug up Felipe again. At least Felipe tried to conceal his intentions by talking to the referee and acting like he wanted to fight. But de Castro immediately clinched up time after time as soon as the referee separated them in a borderline pathetic display. You're a professional cage fighter, and professional cage fights last 15 minutes. I can't call Felipe a winner because he allowed the hugfest to happen, but as the initiator of some of the most boring minutes you'll ever see in an MMA competition, I gotta call Yorgan de Castro a loser. Fun 10 minutes, followed by a terrible 5 minutes. Let's move on, there's no real winner here. Main event is in the women's bantamweight division between number 2 contender Holm and number 6 Ayari Aldana. Oh boy, another long fight, which brings us to a grand total of 7 decision fights. Holly wins this one by unanimous decision and really wins every minute of this 25-minute affair. She outstruck Aldana, put together combinations, she took her down at will, getting a takedown in every round. Aldana did not look like a fighter with an insanely high takedown defense percentage, and she did not look like a fighter who wanted the belt. She was second in every exchange and allowed Holly to do whatever she wanted to. Holm is a very tough fighter to look good against, but we just saw very little to get excited about with Ayari Aldana. Holly did what she always does, threw some kicks, threw 3 and 4 punch combinations, moved forward, showed good movement, but never really hurt her opponent, just frustrated her. In the last 30 seconds or so, Holly appeared to be looking for the finish, and good for her, she could have just coasted, but that aggression was only showed for the last 30 seconds of a 25-minute fight. I was really hoping that Aldana could decisively beat Holm and give us a reason to believe that she could be competitive against Amanda Nunes, but she wasn't even competitive against Holly. She didn't have an answer for anything that Holly did. She had little offense, no defense, and a game plan or strategy seemed to be an afterthought. Aldana got exposed tonight and showed us that she has a really long way to go before being competitive with the best. This was her shot, and she came up very short. So we gotta call Ayari Aldana a big loser. And although Holly looked good, she didn't do anything new or make me think that she'll be able to be competitive against Nunes or even Duran to me. If Nunes is still champ come January, I say book Duran to me for the 3rd time. Maybe Holly can have the winner of that. But based on her performance over the last several years and the much slower maturation we're seeing from her as a fighter, I can't expect her to ever win a title in this division. She looked good, she looked dominant, she's going to keep that number 2 contender ranking, but she looked like the same old Holm, and I'm having a hard time calling her a winner here. There's the real winners and losers of UFC Fight Night Holm versus Aldana. It was a slow night, but we still had some impressive performances, notably from Kenney and Duran. The UFC will stay on Fight Island for a few more weeks, wrapping it all up with an epic pay-per-view between Khabib and Justin Gaethje, but we've got a couple of fight nights to go. I'm super excited about next week's event. We'll have a prediction video for it in the next few days, so hit the subscribe button to be notified of that video's release. And check back in to see some other topical videos posted throughout the week. Till next time.
Whoosh.